Each year we honor a team or two, especially if they're close. And this year our team award is the 1958 and 1960, excuse me, New Waterford Mounties Juvenile and Junior Baseball Champs. And the presenter is our committee member, John White. And John, please come forward.
Thank you, Ambrose. Okay. Mount Carmel, 1958 and 1960. That's my title. In 1958 and 1960, baseball teams from Mount Carmel took home Nova Scotia Juvenile and Junior titles. Of course, both clubs are being honored this evening. During those years, Donnie Blackwood, who passed away this past February, was a top-notch pitcher for both Mount Carmel squads. He lived most of his life in New Waterford and was married to my very special aunt, Muriel, who, along with her family, are in attendance tonight. A while back, Donnie and I chatted at length about those teams. At the time, I was writing a sports column for the provincial newspaper, the Chronicle Herald, which I am very proud that I did that. I did. I don't do it anymore because of cuts. Everywhere cuts. Anyway, what follows was published last year in the Herald. As well, I've added extra material. The 1958 Mount Carmel Juveniles was coached by a New Waterford baseball legend, the late Sandy Burns Sr. After winning the league schedule, the club captured Cape Breton honors by defeating Reserve Mines, Glace Bay, and North Sydney in very tough playoff battles. Mount Carmel then faced the Halifax Royals in the best-of-3 round for the Nova Scotia Juvenile crown. Said Blackwood matter-of-factly, the hardest thing to do in order to play those mainland teams was getting out of Cape Breton. How true. The opening contest in Halifax was played at the Wanderers' grounds, and Donnie, on a nifty three-hitter, shut down the Royals 5-0. Of course, the pitcher had help from his friends. The defensive gem of Game 1 occurred late in the contest when my favorite uncle, Elliot White, ran down a ball in right field and made an outstanding over-the-shoulder catch that preserved the shutout. Elliot proudly told me the other day, after making that catch, I felt like I was Brooklyn Dodgers outfielder Duke Snider, who at the time was my boyhood hero. Meanwhile, the offensive highlight of the match was Mount Carmel catcher Joe Rizzo's mammoth home run. Rizzo hit a ball into center field that traveled at least 400 feet for a 2-run homer, said Blackwood, who added, Joe was a good kid. He was a big burly guy, only 17 at the time, who could hit like crazy. The series shifted to New Waterford the following weekend, and Halifax won the opener 4-2 to even things at 1. Mount Carmel, however, took the decisive match by a 7-5 score to claim the 1958 Nova Scotia Juvenile crown. Blackwood, with strong relief from Angie McIsaac, was credited with the win. Following 4 successive Halifax hits and 2 New Waterford errors, reported the Cape Breton Post, McIsaac moved in from his shortstop position in the 8th inning and nicely put out the fire. 2 years hence, in 1960, Mount Carmel advanced to junior ball, and with many of the same players from the 58 squad on board, the team won yet another provincial title. Coached by the late Jim Fox Jesson, who I might add is another local baseball legend, Mount Carmel ousted Sydney North End to capture the Cape Breton title. The team then faced the Dartmouth Arrows in a beauty of a best-of-5 round for the Nova Scotia Championship. We went to Dartmouth for the first 2 games, recalled Blackwood. The field was near the Angus L. MacDonald Bridge, where the Holiday Inn now is. It was called the Little Brooklyn Stadium. We lost both games 3-2 and 4-3. So as the scene shifted to New Waterford the following weekend, Mount Carmel had its back firmly against the wall. Nonetheless, the resilient home side rallied nicely. In the opening game on Saturday, triples by Gregor McPherson, John Gillis, and Steve Moseychuk propelled the home side to a 9-3 win, thus forcing another contest later that day. And what a game it was. Trailing 8-2 in the early innings, Mount Carmel came back to win 11-9. In Sunday's rubber match, Blackwood tossed a tidy 7-hit complete game 7-3 win, and the 1960 Nova Scotia Junior Championship belonged to Mount Carmel. Newspaper write-ups of the day reported, and I quote, Adrian Timmins at second base for the new champions was the outstanding defensive player of the series. Third sacker Steve Moseychuk also played excellent ball. As mentioned, both the 1958 and 1968 Mount Carmel teams consisted of many of the same players. Benny McKinnon, John Gillis, Joe Rizzo, Gregor McPherson, Tate Springhall, Angie McIsaac, along with Blackwood, were with both clubs. Other members of the 58 squad were Pat Larad, Alec White, Chummy Lee, Jocko Steele, Beanie McLean, John O'Brien, who came all the way from New Hampshire to be here this evening, as well as Danny Power. At Blackwood during her chat, Frank Sim from Stellarton played second base in 58, but wasn't with us in 1960. His father came to Cape Breton to work for the coal company. Later on, Frank was a real good hockey player at Dalhousie University. In fact, Sim attracted interest from NHL clubs. However, he studied medicine instead and turned out to be a nationally acclaimed orthopedic surgeon in the United States. For the past 23 years, he has practiced at the world-famous Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. Dr. Franklin Sim, sitting right up there, has traveled a great distance to be with us tonight. Please stand, Dr. Sim. As for the 1960 team, along with those who played with both clubs, that squad also included Donald Duck Ellsworth and Robert McNeil, both from Dominion, as well as Adrian Timmins, Steve Moseychuk, Dave McDonald, Hector Roach, and Ray Baker, who passed away in April. Ray's wife recently told me that when her husband found out in February of his impending Hall of Fame induction, he was extremely proud. Another Mount Carmel team member in 1960, who, like Dr. Sim, is a Dalhousie alumni, was a 14-year-old rookie that season. He turned out to be, without a doubt, one of the top athletes to come out of our town. A few years ago, George Hughes was inducted into the Waterford and District Sports Heritage Hall of Fame. This past June, George was enshrined in the Cape Breton Sports Hall of Fame for his basketball mastery at Dal, where he captained the team and was named the club's MVP in 1965 and 66. Please stand, George Hughes. I'm very proud to say that the business manager of those 1958 and 60 Mount Carmel championship squads was my 86-year-old father, Simon White, who in a short while will tell us how the team came about. Another member of the executive was a great family friend, the late Tance Carney, whose son and daughter, David and Kathy, who both live in Antigonish, along with their spouses, are here tonight. Others on the hard-working Mount Carmel executive are deceased as well. Danny Glant, Jim Cousins, Joe McLean, and Father Joe Muse. In closing, during that chat a number of years ago, Donnie told me, from juvenile to junior and 2 Nova Scotia championships in 3 years, all those fellows were excellent guys. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very proud to admit induct the 1958 and 1960 Mount Carmel baseball teams. I will now call individually for team members and representatives to come forward and receive your certificates. I ask that you remain standing afterward. Okay, coaches. Sandy Burns, represented by his son Billy Burns. The late Jim Fox Chessa. Executive members, Jim Cousins, the late Jim Cousins. Danny Glant, represented by his daughter, Viola Penny. Clarence Tance Kearney, represented by his son, David. Joel McLean, the late Joel McLean, I should say, and the late Father Joe Muse, represented by Father Ray Huntley from the former Mount Carmel Parish. Was here. And finally, the business manager, Simon White. Players, Ray Baker, represented by his wife, Lynn Baker. Donnie Blackwood, represented by his wife, Muriel. Donald Duck Ellsworth. George Hughes. Pat Larad. The late Chummy Lee. Dave McDonald, unable to attend. Benny McKinnon, represented by his daughter, Jeannie Burke. John Beanie McLean, represented by his sister Faith Graham, but I don't think she's here tonight. Robert McNeil, unable to attend. Angie McIsaac. Gregor McPherson. Steve Moseychuk. John O'Brien. Danny Power. I saw his brother Ray there, but he left. Okay. Joe Rizzo, represented by his daughter, Juanita Rizzo Taylor. Hector Roach, unable to attend. Is he the late Hector Roach? Okay. Frank Sim. Gerald Tate Springhall, represented by his brother Victor. The late Jocko Steele. Adrian Timmons, represented by his son Scott. And last but not least, Alec White. Thank you. Folks, I forgot one important player on that team. He played a big part, John Gillis.
Try to look over this way, folks, for a photo, if you will. Ray J will get you all in. Got him? I'd like to call on Simon White to come forward and say a few words on behalf of the team, please. You did a great job. Congratulations.
Great. Good evening. It has certainly been a good evening.
We have your attention, please, just for
I'm sorry.
last speaker. Sorry, Simon. Go ahead.
I'm the last. In school, when the teachers would call the roll alphabetically, W was always on the bottom, so I'm used to being last. When I look over here at these guys, they were 15, 16, 17, and I was in my mid-20s. And, you know, you look back, that's hard to believe. And a great team, these fellas. They were exceptional. I mean, to win 2 titles in a couple of years, they were just great. I have some words here, but I'm not going to say them all at this hour. I want to echo Carl Marsh's comments about Jack McKenzie. Before I do, though, I have to say that Carl made me sound like I was a varsity man like he was. I enjoyed basketball, but not like Carl. And Jack McKenzie is into my memory as a fine man. In fact, as I entered the hall tonight, the first gentleman that I spoke to was his son. And I was telling him that as I was going through the photographs, I come across one of Carol and I sitting down in the Strand, I assume. And it was the time that cameras where you could set the camera and jump in the picture yourself. And the picture is there with Jack and I'm the smart guy telling him, now watch the camera. So, and of course he wants a copy of that, and I will. Anyway, I'll cut a lot of this. Oh, another thing. The program and the chairman called the team the Waterford Mounties. That's a typographical error. Some of my players have brought that to my attention. The name of the team was Mount Carmel, period. And when I finish reading, you'll find out why it was Mount Carmel, not the Mounties. I suppose the Mounties, as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police of the Mounties, the newspaper people would call Mount Carmel Mounties. So you guys can relax. If you have an old jersey, it's still valid. Okay. I go way down here. And another thing that someone got up before and was speaking about New Waterford, how it's a real sports town. There's a guy in Dominion, named Stevenson, who was known as the town historian. He told me one time, he said that New Waterford, in his opinion, was the most sports-minded town in Cape Breton. And what these gentlemen have been talking about, a stranger has confirmed it. We are a sports town, and we have our people to thank. And 2 of the people is our former mayor, Jerry Marsh, Carl's brother, who was the first chairman, who founded the first recreation committee in the Waterford. And from there, you just look around and see all the sports facilities that are there. And I'm proud to have been associated with one of them. When the ball field over here was rehabilitated, I was working with the town. One of my responsibilities was maintenance of parks. So the mayor and the clerk gave me the job to to fix it up, and we did fix it up. And then Lowell Cormier come along with Gary McDonald, and they put the lights up there. That's an excellent field. So this team almost didn't happen. In the summer, well, I get the date now. Woo, woo, woo. In 1956, Sandy Burns approached me. Those of you who don't know Sandy Burns, he was a senior baseball player in town, pitcher, and he was putting together a juvenile team, looking for help to run the operation and raise money, etc. So we had a chat. I agreed that I would do that, and the idea was he would look after things on the field, I'd look after the rest, which is find the money. And we called the meeting for the Strand. Jim, nobody came, except an elderly gentleman who was a merchant in this town. And he came in, he said, I got a deal for you if you'll take it. He said, I'll put my name in Thompson and Sutherland's. Thompson and Sutherland's was a hardware plumbing store over by the town hall that sold sporting equipment. He said, you buy your goods there. At the end of the year, any money you have, put it into Thompson and Sutherland's, and I look after the rest. So we did. We had a great year. When it comes time for the next season, we called another meeting, hoping that I'm going to say his name, I shouldn't say it, hoping that man would do the same thing. And we looked for assistance, asking people to come. Nobody came. But he did. He arrived again. And of course, our hopes went up. He didn't come into the very far end of the hall. And all of a sudden they said, and I'll mimic him, this meeting is adjourned. You owe me money. So that was the end of baseball for us. However, a number of weeks later, maybe a number of days, Father Joe Muse, you heard him inducted here a little while ago, he arrived at my house. And he said he and Father Beaton, who was the pastor at Mount Carmel, had been discussing what had happened to your team. We have a proposition. If we give you the facilities for the Strand Gym to earn money, would you resurrect the team? We put that to the couple of us, Sandy Burns, Jim Cousins, his brother-in-law. We said, okay. Then Terence Kearney came along with us. Terence was a neighbor. Joe McLean. So it's a small group, 3 or 4 guys. Put on dances in the Strand. Carl Marsh talked about the parish earning money in the Strand, putting on dances. But that kind of entertainment was just about finished in those days. However, we got a hold of the Whitney Orchestra, which Carl talked about, made a deal with him, and he came every Friday night. And then there was another orchestra in the area, Emilio Pache. You old guys like I am, you'll remember that. His brother-in-law was operating the Apache Orchestra. We made a deal with him. He came on Tuesday nights. So every Tuesday and Friday nights, a group of us would go down to the Strand, put on the dance, earn the money, while those fellows you see over there were bringing fame to the town with their baseball skills. That's the story. I don't know if that lady down there is trying to talk to me or just laughing at me. Pardon me? My hearing aid, the battery must be low. I can't hear you. This is how the team came. How the team made it. Now, you've heard enough of me, so I'm going to quit. But before that, I'm going to tell a story, and I'm going to take the liberty to use Duncan Roach, Father Albert. Is Father Albert still here? There he is. You're in it too, and I feel I can do it with Albert because he and I are friends from a long time. I used to be a scoutmaster. Anyway, the mackerel was running, and Duncan invited Albert to go in the boat and fish mackerel. And they were fishing there, and they're pulling them in and pulling them in. And finally, Duncan got out of the boat. He stepped out. He stepped on the side of the boat, and Albert was looking at him. He's standing on the water, you know. And he figured that, he said, I thought my religion did all that, not his. So he said, okay, if he can do that, I can do it. So Albert jumped out, right down. Duncan pulled him in and got all the water out of him. What were you doing, Albert? Well, he said, I figured if you can stand on water, I can. He said, Albert, he said, the reef is on my side. That's where I was standing. Anyway, I want to thank the committee for, on the behalf of these gentlemen that are over there. And I want to thank my son for the reference to me and Carol as well. And I want to thank you for coming and listening to us and sharing the happiness we have. Good night.
Thank you, Simon. Congratulations, team. That's it, folks. It's a wrap. You're welcome to hang around. The bar's open for a while if you want to socialize. Thank you. See you again next year.